Their phones were unbreakable, but the empire behind them was falling apart. For years, Nokia ruled the mobile world, shaping how billions connected, worked, and played. Its name was synonymous with trust, durability, and innovation. But behind the ringtones, indestructible designs, and iconic models, cracks began to show. What happened to the original king of cell phones? And how did the phones outlive the company that made them? On today's episode of the Infographic Show, we're looking at why Nokia failed. In an era dominated by American, Chinese, and Japanese tech giants, Nokia emerged from an unlikely place, Finland. Based in Espoo, just outside the capital Helsinki, Nokia didn't begin as a tech company at all. Founded in 1865 as a pulp mill, it spent its early years producing paper. As wars swept across Europe, Nokia adapted, making respirators for military and medical use. It was a small business, but a very useful one. And that would lead to a big swing. Nokia as we know it actually began in 1967, when it merged with two other Finnish companies. The merger allowed the company to start making a host of other products, including rubber boots, through its partnership with Finnish Rubber Works. But the merger also pushed Nokia to the cable and electronics business for the first time. Before long, it was producing communications gear for the Finnish military, along with mobile radios, telephone switches, and a wide range of electronic components. It also had one big advantage during this era: a trade deal with the Soviet Union, its former enemy. This positioned the company as a crucial conduit between East and West during the Cold War, leveraging Finland's status as a neutral nation. And that gave it all the resources it needed to make a spectacular pivot. As Kari Kairemo took over as CEO in 1977, Finland was gaining a reputation as Nordic Japan, and Kairemo wanted to lean into technology. Nokia went on an acquisition blitz during this time, becoming one of the largest television manufacturers in Europe. It also acquired the massive German telephone brand Schaub Lorenz. As Nokia continued acquiring tech firms, it gradually phased out its more basic product lines and shifted its focus toward phones and advanced electronics. But its most famous product wouldn't come from Nokia itself. Nokia acquired Mobira in 1979, and the company soon launched the Mobira Senator, their first car phone. But Nokia had little interest in this business, viewing the mobile phone craze as a passing fad. After all, the phones of that era were clunky, impractical devices that used unpredictable radio signals. But over time, it became clear that these phones were desirable luxury items if they could be made sleeker, more reliable, and easier to use. And with a change in leadership, everything would be upended. Kairemo died unexpectedly in 1988, and he would be replaced by Simo Voiletto. The forward-looking executive divested from more industrial units and continued to lean into phone production. Finland was going through a rough financial period in the late 1980s, and many thought that these sell-offs were a sign the company was going to go bankrupt. But there was a plan. However, Voiletto wouldn't be the one to carry it out. He stepped down in 1992, handing the reins to Jorma Ollila, the man who had built Nokia's mobile phone division. Just a few years earlier, Voiletto had considered selling that very division. But Ollila convinced him otherwise, and now Ollila was in charge of shaping the company's future. It would be a meteoric rise from there. The company rolled out its new mobile phone model after the Senator in 1987, and the technology it used would define the new world of communication. The global system for mobile communications, the foundation for the first digital cell phone networks, was built with Nokia playing a central role alongside Germany's Siemens. In 1992, Nokia launched the 1011, the first commercial mobile phone designed for this system, and the market responded immediately. After losing money in 1991, the company was earning over $1 billion in profit by 1995, and from there, its rise seemed unstoppable. But the cell phone world was about to become a lot more competitive. As the 1990s went on, cell phones went from being a niche item to a popular way of communication and a major status symbol. Nokia got rid of most of its other divisions and went all in on communications, launching a digital satellite system in the US and being involved in the development of digital TV. And while Motorola, an American company, initially dominated the cell phone space, that soon changed. By 1998, Nokia had surpassed them and produced over 100 million mobile phones. And the key to their success? It's all about the kids. This marked the beginning of an era where cell phones became a must-have status symbol for teenagers, at least if they could persuade their parents to pay for one and then trust them not to rack up a massive bill. It meant freedom, the ability to call your friends whenever you wanted. And parents didn't mind it either. They now had the power to make their kids check in more often. And Nokia knew how to appeal to both groups. The Nokia cell phones quickly gained a good reputation for a number of reasons. They tended to be blocky, sturdy phones with a keypad of buttons, a simple green screen, and no antenna that you had to fiddle with. This made them easy to slip into your pocket. And while the focus on the phone was still making phone calls back then, these models had a few other features with a lot of appeal, including a basic text function, and they even played some games with rudimentary graphics. But it was one phone that would put Nokia on the map. The Nokia 3310 was released at the exact right time, coming out at the dawn of the millennium. This was when cell phone use went from being a cult phenomenon to a mainstream thing. Many helicopter parents even chose to buy phones for their kids without being asked. And you probably didn't have to worry about replacing them anytime soon. If there is one thing that cuts across generations, it's that kids are kinda stupid. You give them something and they'll probably find a way to break it. And that is one of the things parents liked more about the Nokia cell phones of this era, particularly the 3310. It was incredibly sturdy. For one thing, it came in one big piece. No little fragile plastic to break. It had relatively few entry and exit points, and the buttons were durable as well. It also had a long battery life, and if powered off, it would stay functioning indefinitely. Some models have been found decades later, and they still turn on when activated. And that didn't just make these phones a success, it made them a legend. Like all brands, Nokia had to keep evolving as cell phone technology advanced. The 3310 would be replaced with more sophisticated models, many built with the same durable design meant to last, unlike the company itself. Is Nokia dying? Not even close. The company is still one of Finland's biggest economic powerhouses. It's listed on both Nasdaq and the New York Stock Exchange, and in 2020 it employed 92,000 people across over 100 countries. During this period, it made a revenue of around 23 billion euros, but that is a shadow of its former self. Today it is barely a footnote in the electronics world, being lapped countless times over by modern rivals who have taken its innovations and made them look old hat. How did a powerhouse company let this happen? By 1998, Nokia was bringing in more than $2 billion in revenue and charging full steam ahead in the electronics field. It expanded into areas like mobile TV, mobile gaming, and even early internet services. But this wasn't always met with success. Nokia's attempt to break into the video game market with its N-Gage console struggled to compete against giants like Nintendo and Sega. But even if the device fell short as a gaming platform, it helped spark another revolution, turning cameras into a must-have feature on every new phone. That guy blocking up the sidewalk taking a selfie? You can thank Nokia for him. But as the 2000s dawned, they struggled to keep up with the big guns. While Nokia was a powerhouse in Europe and around the world during this time, it was still a tiny company compared to the electronics giants like Apple, Microsoft, Sony, and AT&T. They say you don't know what you had until it's gone. Over time, people started appreciating the clunky but dependable phones that had made Nokia famous. They were, after all, workmanlike devices with only a few additional features. But as the internet became a part of everyday life, demand shifted towards sleeker, more versatile designs. Flip phones fit neatly into pockets but were far more fragile. And for Nokia, that wasn't entirely bad news. When a teenager's phone broke, families didn't wait for the next holiday to replace it. With constant connectivity already essential, they went straight to the nearest cell phone store. Nokia's old reliable model was the dominant force in the market for a while, but it didn't beat its rivals to the market on new models. And once you lose the advantage, it's hard to make up ground. As the 2010s approached, Nokia was no longer the undisputed leader, but just one of the many players in a crowded market. In 2007, it still held a majority share of the global cell phone sector, but with the dawn of the smartphone era, that peak would never return. The market was evolving too quickly for Nokia to keep up. And the biggest earthquake of all was right around the corner. 2007 was when the first iPhone hit the market, and this would change the cell phone market forever. The phone wasn't just designed to be a communication device. It was meant to be a computer in your pocket. You would be able to access your email, browse websites, listen to music, and make online orders, all with the press of a button. Gone were the traditional plastic buttons. Instead, everything was done via touchscreen. The smartphone suddenly exploded into the hottest item around, even if the phone was shockingly thin and the screen incredibly vulnerable. Everyone scrambled to catch up, and many tripped over themselves on the way. While Nokia would release its own smartphone a year later, the Nokia 5800 Express Music, it never quite gained the success it sought. Nokia was the sturdy old reliable company, and Apple was the cool kid on the block. It also had to compete with other companies debuting their own smartphones and other tech. Nokia's 2008 share of the market clocked in at 38.6%, but it would never get that high again. The company shut down its Japanese sales division that same year due to a lack of sales, and it would be the beginning of the end. As Nokia muddled through the next few years, it would be lapped at every turn by new technology and models from Apple. The company became known for rolling out new iPhones every few years, creating stampedes to the Apple stores that popped up in malls across the country. Nokia's phones gradually settled into the role of reliable budget options, sold mainly through electronics chains like Best Buy, or bundled with carrier plans. The days when Nokia was the must-have brand already felt like a distant memory, and it was only a matter of time before the other shoe dropped. And it did in 2013. But it might have also been a savior. While Nokia was a shadow of its former self, it did have one advantage: years of research into strong cell phone infrastructure. And that was something a more media-savvy company could take advantage of. And in 2013, Microsoft stepped up to save the day. Nokia had debuted the Lumia 920 the previous year, and while this was their most successful smartphone model yet, it wasn't enough to pull them out of a financial spiral. But Microsoft needed a cell phone manufacturer who could produce more hardware in a hurry, and the deal was inked. It was the end of an era for Nokia, and a big blow to supporters of the Finnish company. The chairman at the time, Risto Siilasmaa, acknowledged that this was a difficult decision, but most people believed the company would have crashed if it hadn't been acquired. And in the years to come, Nokia's infrastructure would be put to good use, with the software teams merging and the Nokia team helping to make Microsoft Mobile a powerful division in the cell phone world. But for those who had been loyal to the Finnish company from the start, many of them wondered, could this bitter end have been avoided? Was Nokia's downfall self-inflicted? One of the biggest problems for Nokia is that it was slow to adapt to the evolution of smartphones. As many companies were developing new systems based on Android technology, which was suited to touchscreen phones, Nokia stuck with its trusty old keypad. But by the time Nokia recognized that the industry was changing with or without them, it was too late. They tried to adapt with their own Symbian operating system, but it lacked the developer support and the ecosystem that rival platforms enjoyed. And soon they were passed not just by Apple, but by other companies like Samsung. They were the top company for cell phones, but it wasn't a cell phone market anymore. Today, using cell phones for phone calls is the last thing on most people's minds. In fact, many millennials and Gen Z users leave their ringtone off permanently, and they make people text them. Nokia's sturdy, reliable phone still appealed to older millennials and even their parents, many of whom would gladly have kept using them, but there wasn't enough profit left in the market. Eventually, Nokia was forced to end support for its classic models and shift to the next generation of technology, where it now had to play catch-up with the new giants of industry. But the acquisition didn't turn out to be a win for either side. While Nokia's technology gave Microsoft a boost, the Windows Phone platform faced many of the same challenges. It lagged far behind Apple, it lacked the third-party developer support needed to compete, and it struggled to keep pace with the rapid shift toward apps. This hurt Nokia's market share even more, and in the early 2010s the company was a shadow of its former self. And its rebrand didn't help either. One of Nokia's biggest problems was that it never sold itself as a brand. Instead, its marketing focused on individual products, promoting their technical features. That strategy had worked when Nokia dominated the market, but by the 2000s the industry had shifted. Competitors weren't just selling phones, they were selling lifestyle brands. This was where Apple thrived. It positioned itself as a tech-forward brand for stylish, trend-conscious customers who wanted their devices to reflect their identity. Nokia never built that kind of brand, and by the time it tried, it was too late to compete with the new face of modern tech. Without its cell phone division, Nokia could only watch as the tech world moved on without it. The company's cell phones were now struggling for someone else, and it looked like Microsoft wouldn't benefit from this purchase in the long run. Nokia tried to pivot to tablets and cameras in the years that followed, and they found limited success, especially with the Ozo, a 360-degree virtual reality camera designed for high-quality filmmaking. In 2015, Nokia merged with the French telecommunications giant Alcatel-Lucent while waiting out its non-compete clause with Microsoft. But the magic was gone. Today, Nokia is still one of Finland's largest companies, but it is much more of a behind-the-scenes powerhouse than it was in the past. The fallout from the company's merger with Microsoft was devastating. Microsoft lost $7 billion that it wrote down on its taxes. Meanwhile, Nokia lost 90% of its market capitalization. In the end, the company's downfall can be traced largely to its hesitation to embrace Android. It assumed the smartphone era would not dominate as quickly or as completely as it did, and that decision proved fatal. So is there any hope for the former king of cell phones? The good news for Nokia is it isn't dead, and where there is life there is hope. But the company has turned primarily into an equipment supplier, working behind the scenes to ensure smooth production for other companies. Today, the Nokia brand is managed by HMD Global, a Finnish mobile phone company that licenses the name and develops new devices, with some input from former Nokia executives. Nokia owns 10% stake in the company, providing it a steady financial infusion for little work. But like many companies, its biggest hope might be in nostalgia. While Nokia made an all-time blunder in the cell phone arms race when it didn't pivot to smartphones in time, the pendulum might be swinging the other way. Today, we're seeing an increased wave of concern about what smartphones are doing to attention spans, particularly in children. The algorithm has been feeding kids a never-ending stream of brain rot since they were toddlers, and their attention spans and behavior have suffered as a result. Many schools are starting to take action, banning phones bell to bell and making kids go cold turkey. And even some parents are starting to ask, is this safe? Good luck taking a cell phone away from a teenager these days, but for the kids younger than them, things might be changing. More parents have been holding off on getting their kids smartphones, and that might mean an opening for the return of flip phones. In the past, this market was mostly limited to simple, reloadable phones aimed at grandparents or very young children. But in recent years, more parents have shown an interest in kid-friendly phones, devices that block TikTok, YouTube, and freemium games that can quietly drain mom and dad's wallets. And if someone needs a good, sturdy, dumb phone, Nokia is ready. Nokia actually revived its old-school 3310 phone in 2017, geared heavily toward nostalgia, and it looked shockingly similar. It still had the traditional keypad and one-piece design, although its digital screen was very different and now resembled a smartphone screen's colorful design. It ran on 3G internet service, and it was quickly a hit. Reviewers said it was as easy to use as it was. It didn't have the versatility and usefulness on the internet that many modern users had become accustomed to which its fans said, "That is the point." Nokia is now known as a relic of a simpler time, when cell phones were just a small part of our daily lives, and some people would like to go back there. While the company as we know it no longer exists, the brand has endured, and the anti-smartphone backup might just help revive it. But if teachers are hoping that this will mean fewer distractions in class, don't count on it. That beeping you hear from the back is probably students playing Space Invaders or Snake on their old-school device. Nokia's downfall showed how even giants can collapse, but it's not the only one. Find out why even the home of the Happy Meal is struggling in The Real Reason McDonald's is Failing, or click on this video instead.